Both Florida and South Carolina is home to 8% of all Americans in the United States. Now, despite the fact that these two states are located in the South, South Carolina has grown consistently over the last 75 years, yet Florida has grown by an absolutely amazing amount over the same exact time period. So right now, we're going to dive into why so many Americans move to Florida and not to South Carolina. So give me a thumbs up if you're good with that. So the question is, why does Florida have 17 million more Americans than South Carolina does, right? Well, if you ever talk to anybody about moving south or retiring, you'll find that Florida usually is on the agenda, right? And it's been that way for many years. I mean, what's on the cover of every retirement brochure? It's like we all have been programmed and we must go, and the bell goes off. I gotta go to Florida. So let's talk about the numbers. In 1950, South Carolina had 2.1 million population, and Florida had 2.7 million. And today, South Carolina has 5.2 million Americans, while Florida has 22.6 million Americans. Now, of course, Florida is geographically located a little further south than South Carolina, but Florida and South Carolina simply do not have the same growth rate. Now, it's crazy when you consider the fact that South Carolina is simply a beautiful state. And the state motto even says so, smiling faces, beautiful places. But the discrepancy between these two states, it's pretty jarring. Now let's take a look at both Florida and South Carolina's origins. Spain, France, and even the British established many exploratory missions in both states. And the settlements were established through colonial efforts. Now both states were both home to many different indigenous tribes. And the French would establish a settlement which is known today in the area of Charleston, South Carolina. The conquistadors landed in 1513 in an area that is known as St. Augustine, Florida. And in 1670, the English established a province of Carolina, which was with planters and fur trade, and they used that as commerce. The state grew after that, after decades, was very different. In the 1900s, many of the northeastern states boomed with manufacturing and the Industrial Revolution. Now, back in the day, the Northeast held a majority of the U.S. population, but recently, the population shift has completely changed, and the population and migration is moving south. The roles are reversed. So if you look at the U.S. Census reports, they tell us that today, 57 million live in the northeastern states, and the southern states have a population of 128 million. But even with recessions and housing crises and destructive hurricanes, people kept moving south. Now, this population pattern was seen during the 1950s through the 1970s. But Florida is the one state that really changed a lot from 2011 to today. Now, the population of Florida has surpassed 22 million, and it's been fueled by 3.1 million people in the last 10 years. So let's take a look at Florida and South Carolina today. Now, like it or not, Florida's population is booming. And the charts show that very hidden story. So let's go ahead and dive into some of these numbers. The influx of housing developments, urban sprawl, overgrowth is turning some people's dreams into a living nightmare. Now, this poses a problem contradicting those retirement brochures which promised paradise. So let's start with Florida. With a dramatic leap, the average age of Florida's population in Florida had 567,881 deaths, which exceeds the 478,839 births. So on the surface, you would think that the Florida population would be crashing, right? But the migration of over 600,000 new residents from other states in the last 2 years has exploded. Plus, 175,000 new residents from other countries has flooded the state with additional population. Now, this fact has also been troubling to some Floridians who have written me and said they're super unhappy with how crowded Florida has gotten. Now, they keep telling me it's not like the retirement brochure. Those days are gone, guys. Many retirees have a dream of taking tango lessons or sitting on the dock of the bay. But with all this growth, residents are finding themselves in crowds, traffic, waiting in lines, increasing drive time, road rage. And that's exactly what they wanted to escape, the rat race. So where are all these people moving to in Florida? I mean, after all, the state is not creating any more land. Or are they? Now, of course, Florida's coastal towns and communities are still packed with people, which puts them and everything they own in harm's way for any natural disaster. But today, we're seeing housing developments carved out of Florida's limited wilderness or ranch land. And it's not just alligators and mosquitoes. Currently, more people are moving to Florida's interior of the state. And remote areas of the state are now being populated as well. And some residents are finding out the truth the hard way. And now they know that flooding doesn't only occur along the coast of Florida. They now see power companies that are struggling to keep up with the population growth, with electric rate increases, along with power outages. And they also now know that the interior counties are also hotter. And some folks, including the popular communities of the villages, they're having to put up with more often those triple-digit temperatures, which don't make for all fun and games. And of course, Florida is not for everyone. Some merely can't tolerate the reality of today's Florida, and they're choosing to move to other states like South Carolina, where it's more moderate temperatures, sunshine, lower property taxes, and taking back a piece of their own little paradise.
Let's talk about South Carolina. For whatever reason, South Carolina has come late to the dance. But recently, it's been discovered as a hidden gem in the land of pleasant living, with tens of thousands of people who are moving from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and believe it or not, even Florida. South Carolina has become one of the fastest growing states in the country, and geographically, it has both mountains and the sea. Now, some people just want to trade their snowshoes in for sandals and enjoy that coastal living lifestyle. I get it. But of course, South Carolina is not for everyone. But considering the miles of premier beaches, the warmer, more consistent weather year-round on the coast, this is just one of the attractions of the state. Now, it doesn't hurt that South Carolina also has 76% fewer hurricanes compared to Florida. Now, the western part of the state is more mountainous, and you can see occasional snowstorms and features scenery where trees on leaves change their color in the fall. In the western part of South Carolina, there's beautiful mountains and waterfalls and short winters compared to many other northern states. But living in South Carolina is a nice change of pace from the congested hustle and bustle of other states. But don't expect New York City. I mean, life does move a little bit slower in South Carolina. Even the big cities in this state have a small town charm. But affordability recently has been one of the main reasons why many are moving and relocating down south. And people are finding that the true cost of living compared to other states is more affordable in the South. So the cost of living in South Carolina is actually 13% lower than the national average cost of living. And many residents have found that South Carolina taxes are lower as well, especially when you compare those crazy property taxes from the Northeast. I mean, South Carolina is the 6th lowest property taxes in the nation. And retirees, they love the fact that Social Security benefits are not taxed in South Carolina. But people say, yeah, but Florida doesn't have any income tax. Well, that is true, but Florida sure does get their fair share of your money by adding it to just about everything else. So many Florida residents have been recently complaining about the out-of-control, skyrocketing homeowners insurance crises and the new home property taxes. Now, that's the stuff that's crushing many Florida residents, and it may be why so many are looking for better options. Over the next few decades, both states are expected to grow considerably. So just think about what it's going to look like 10 years from now. Florida and South Carolina are both great options for Americans to move to, and both have plenty of exciting opportunities. However, the lower cost of living, the high population migration, and future homeowners insurance issues may make the difference between where people are going to ultimately migrate to and move to in the future. Now, if you've already been a subscriber here to this channel, you already know about the other videos about living in Florida and living in South Carolina. And if you haven't seen them, you should go check them out. But just realize that South Carolina is not the solution for everyone. But U.S. News and World Report did rank Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where I am today, as the fastest growing metro area in the nation for the 3rd year in a row. So there's got to be something that the people like about the area. So if you're thinking about moving to South Carolina and you want to know what it's like to work, to eat, to sleep, to play, and not sugarcoat anything, the real true pros and cons, the good, the bad, and the ugly, pick up the phone and give us a call at 843-839-9870, because this is where my real estate team lives. They know the area like the back of their hand. And no matter where you are moving in the nation, just be sure that you know everything you need to know before you make that move. And I'll see you in the next video. Hey, was any of this helpful? Let me know. Take care, my friends.